Something is happening to the weather right now that has not been seen in decades. And if you live anywhere in the United States, the next 14 days are going to affect you directly. Stay with me for the next 30 seconds because what I am about to show you will completely change how you prepare for the coming weeks. Right now, as you are watching this, a sudden stratospheric warming event has split the polar vortex into two separate pieces. That is not normal. That is not a small thing. The last time this happened at this scale, it triggered one of the most brutal cold outbreaks in recent American history. And here is the part that is going to shock you. This cold air is not just coming, it is already locked and loaded. The models are screaming, the data is clear. And at the 5-minute mark of this video, I am going to give you the exact timing for when this cold blast hits your city, what temperatures to expect, and how long it is going to last. I have forecast information for more than 270 cities across the United States. So drop your city name in the comments right now, and I will make sure you get the specific information for your area. But first, let me show you what is actually happening in the atmosphere, because this is the part that nobody else is telling you. And this is what makes this weather pattern genuinely unusual. We have a heat dome sitting over the American Southwest right now. Temperatures in Phoenix, Arizona are pushing past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In Palm Springs, California, the mercury is already at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. In Death Valley, we are looking at over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. These are not just warm days. These are record-setting, historically early heat events. Some of these locations are breaking their earliest 100-degree temperature records ever recorded. Ever. And here is the twist that should stop you in your tracks. While the Southwest is cooking, a massive Arctic air mass is being held in place just north of the border, building pressure, gaining strength, and waiting for the right moment to pour south. That moment is coming very soon, and when these two air masses collide, the results are going to be dramatic. Here is what I want you to understand before we go any deeper into the forecast. This is not a typical seasonal transition. This is not just winter being stubborn. What we are looking at is a direct consequence of that polar vortex split I mentioned. When the polar vortex breaks apart, it loses its ability to contain Arctic air over the North Pole. That frigid air then spills southward in big waves, one right after another. We are going to see two distinct cold blasts over the next 10 days. The first one is more of a warm-up punch. The second one is the knockout blow, and I'm going to walk you through both of them in precise detail. But I promised you something at the 30-second mark. I promised you value right up front. So here it is. The single most important thing you need to know today is this. If you are currently enjoying mild or warm weather, that comfort ends no later than next Monday in most of the country. If you are already dealing with cold, you are about to get another round of it. And if you are in the Southwest enjoying that early summer heat, you need to know that heat is going to shift and then collapse by the end of next week. Write that down. Monday is the turning point for the first cold blast. Wednesday through Friday of next week is the turning point for the second and more powerful cold blast. Now let me take you through this pattern piece by piece, city by city, region by region, because the devil is in the details, and the details here are genuinely dramatic. Let us start with what is happening right now. The Southwest is under an upper-level high-pressure system. Think of upper-level high pressure as a massive spinning top of warm air sitting in the atmosphere about 18,000 feet up. That is roughly 3.5 miles above your head. That spinning top pushes air outward and downward, which compresses the air and heats it up. It also keeps clouds and storms away. This is why Phoenix and Tucson and Las Vegas are baking under crystal clear skies, even as parts of the northern United States are still dealing with freezing temperatures and snow. Right now, today, Phoenix is at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Tucson is at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Las Vegas is at 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Palm Springs is sitting at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Indio, California is at 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Borrego Springs is touching 73 degrees Fahrenheit. These are extraordinary temperatures for this time of year. Meanwhile, look at what is happening just a few states away. Fairbanks, Alaska is at negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Arctic Village is at negative 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Anchorage is sitting at just 3 degrees Fahrenheit. The contrast between the extreme heat in the Southwest and the extreme cold still locked up in Alaska and the far north is one of the most dramatic temperature gradients we have seen this season. And that contrast is the engine driving everything that is about to happen. Here is something that most weather coverage is missing. The reason this cold blast is going to be so powerful is not just because there is cold air. It is because there is so much of it, and it has been building for weeks, and the pathway for it to come south is about to open up like a gate swinging wide open. That gate is the jet stream. The jet stream is the fast-moving river of air that flows from west to east across the country at high altitude. When the jet stream is strong and in a straight path, it acts like a fence that keeps cold air locked to the north. But when the jet stream buckles and dips southward, it creates a pathway for Arctic air to pour south. And right now, the models are showing the jet stream about to take a dramatic southward dip. The East Pacific Oscillation, which is a measure of atmospheric pressure patterns over the Pacific Ocean, is going negative. When it goes negative, that high-pressure system that has been holding up the jet stream in the west starts to weaken and fall. The jet stream drops. Cold air floods south. This is not speculation. This is basic atmospheric physics, and the data is confirming it in real time. Now, let me give you the timeline. I want to be very specific here because I know you need to know when this is going to hit your area. The first cold blast begins its move south on Sunday into Monday. This first blast is primarily going to target the northern tier of the United States. We are talking about the northern Great Plains, the upper Midwest, the northern Rocky Mountains, and the Great Lakes region. This first blast will bring temperatures that are roughly 5 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit below average. Not catastrophic, but definitely noticeable. If you are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, you are going to feel this by Monday. If you are in Fargo, North Dakota, you are going to feel it Sunday night. If you are in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Monday morning is when this hits. Here is the key thing about this first blast. It is not the main event. It is the opening act. And while this first punch is coming through, something else is happening that sets up the second, much more powerful blast. While the first cold blast is moving across the northern tier, that upper-level high pressure is going to shift. It is going to move from its current position over the southwest and slide eastward toward the south-central United States. This means two things happen simultaneously. First, the heat that was locked over the southwest starts to build over Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Second, the pathway behind that moving high pressure opens up for the second and much larger Arctic air mass to pour south. Let me stop here for a second because I want to make sure you understand why this matters. That shifting of the upper level high is what drives the whole second half of this forecast. It is the pivot point. Everything after Tuesday of next week depends on where that high pressure stops. If it stops over Texas and stays there, the cold blast coming in behind it could dive all the way to the Gulf Coast. If it pushes further into the Gulf of Mexico, then the southern half of the United States might stay warmer and the cold blast gets squeezed northward. Right now, the models are suggesting the high pressure is going to stop somewhere over the south-central region, which means the cold blast behind it will have a significant southern reach. Watch for updates on this in the next 48 hours. The models are going to be refining this answer daily, and I will bring you the latest information as it becomes available. If you are not subscribed, now is the time to hit that button because this forecast is going to evolve rapidly. The second cold blast begins moving south on Tuesday night into Wednesday. By Thursday, it is going to be digging deep into the United States. By Friday, it hits its peak intensity, and this is where the numbers get serious. In the Rocky Mountains, wind chills on Thursday and Friday could reach -10 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit, even during daytime highs. I want to say that again. Daytime highs in the higher elevations of the Rockies could feel like -10 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit when you factor in the wind chill. If you are in Denver, Colorado, you are looking at temperatures dropping back to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit with a sharp wind chill. If you are in Cheyenne, Wyoming, the wind gusts are going to be your biggest problem, potentially in the 60 to 70 mile per hour range. If you are in Billings, Montana, you have already been dealing with cold, and this second blast is going to reinforce it strongly. For the Midwest and Great Lakes, this second blast brings temperatures 10 to 25 degrees below average. We are talking about mid to upper 20s Fahrenheit in Chicago, Illinois. We are talking about low 20s Fahrenheit in Cleveland, Ohio. Detroit, Michigan is going to be in the 20s. Milwaukee, Wisconsin back to the low 20s Fahrenheit. Indianapolis, Indiana looking at a return to freezing temperatures just when it seemed like spring was finally taking hold. And here is the part that affects everyone in the Northeast. The combination of this cold blast and moisture pulled up from the Gulf and Atlantic creates prime conditions for significant snowfall. The most likely target zone for heavy snow from this second blast is the upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine corridor. We are talking about the possibility of a foot or more of snow in some locations. 1 foot or more, that is a major snowstorm. Albany, New York, Burlington, Vermont, Concord, New Hampshire, and Bangor, Maine need to pay very close attention to the forecast over the next 7 to 10 days. Do not miss the next segment because I am about to break down the city-by-city forecast in detail. This is the information you have been waiting for. Let us start on the West Coast, where this whole pattern is originating, Seattle, Washington. Right now, 53 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Over the next 3 days, light rain continues. But as we get into next week, the cold blast brings clearing skies and temperatures dropping back into the mid to upper 30s Fahrenheit. Snow levels will drop in the Cascades. If you are planning to drive through the mountain passes next week, be prepared for winter driving conditions. Portland, Oregon, currently sitting at 51 degrees Fahrenheit. The pattern for Portland is similar to Seattle. Rain through the weekend, then a dramatic temperature drop as we push into next week. Low 40s during the day, upper 20s to low 30s at night. Sacramento, California, currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. The heat is going to build this week, but the back half of next week brings a significant cool down. Temperatures that were flirting with the upper 60s and low 70s will drop back to the low to mid 50s Fahrenheit. San Francisco, California, currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Expect temperatures to stay in the mid to upper 50s range through the week with the cool down arriving by the end of next week. Los Angeles, California, right now 68 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. This week, Los Angeles climbs toward the low to mid 70s as the heat dome expands. But by the end of next week, temperatures will drop back to the mid to upper 60s. Not dramatic for Los Angeles, but a definite shift. San Diego, California, currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, warming to the upper 60s early next week before the cool down. Southern California generally escapes the most dramatic impacts of this cold blast, but the pattern change will be felt. Las Vegas, Nevada, currently 67 degrees Fahrenheit. This is where it gets interesting. Las Vegas is going to see temperatures climb toward 90 degrees Fahrenheit this weekend, possibly 95 degrees Fahrenheit by Monday. Then the second cold blast arrives and pulls temperatures back to the 60s and low 70s Fahrenheit by the end of next week. That is a 20 to 30 degree swing in just a few days. Phoenix, Arizona, currently 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Phoenix is going to push toward 105 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit by this weekend. That is extraordinary for this time of year. Phoenix will be under an extreme heat warning. Then as the high pressure shifts east, temperatures will moderate toward the 80s by mid to late next week. Still warm, but a noticeable change from the record heat of this weekend. Tucson, Arizona, currently 68 degrees Fahrenheit, following a very similar pattern to Phoenix. Expect temperatures in the low 100 degrees Fahrenheit range this weekend, then dropping back to the 70s and low 80s next week. Now let us move to the mountain states. Denver, Colorado, currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit with partly sunny skies. Denver is going to see temperatures in the upper 60s to low 70s this weekend. Then the first cold blast on Monday drops things to the 50s. The second blast arrives Wednesday into Thursday, pulling Denver temperatures back down to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit. This is a 40-degree temperature swing over just 5 days. Denver residents know these big swings are part of living in the Front Range, but this one is going to be noteworthy. Colorado Springs, Colorado, currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar trajectory to Denver. Warm this weekend, then a dramatic drop early to mid next week. Cheyenne, Wyoming, currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Red flag fire warnings are in effect right now for the Cheyenne area through today. Winds are already gusting to 30 to 40 miles per hour. By next week, those winds shift direction and increase further as the cold blast arrives. Expect wind gusts in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range when the cold blast pushes through, combined with temperatures dropping to the teens and 20s Fahrenheit. Casper, Wyoming, currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit. also under red flag fire warnings today. Similar story to Cheyenne for the cold blast next week. This is serious fire weather right now, followed by a dramatic winter return. Billings, Montana, currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Montana is going to be impacted significantly by both cold blasts. The first one reinforces the cold already present in the northern Rockies. The second one could bring some snow and temperatures back to the 20s Fahrenheit. Bozeman, Montana, currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Expect temperatures to drop into the teens Fahrenheit by mid to late next week with the second cold blast. Snow is likely in Bozeman and surrounding mountain valleys. Salt Lake City, Utah, currently 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Salt Lake is going to feel both cold blasts. Temperatures this weekend will be pleasant in the low to mid-60s. Then the second blast drops Salt Lake back to the 30s Fahrenheit with possible snow in the valleys and significant snow in the mountains. Boise, Idaho, currently 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Boise will feel the cold blasts similar to Salt Lake City. Temperatures drop to the 30s Fahrenheit next week. Mountain snowpack will benefit from this cold pattern. Now let us move through the Great Plains where this cold blast is going to make a dramatic entrance. Bismarck, North Dakota, currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The first cold blast hits Bismarck by Sunday night into Monday. The second blast reinforces the cold mid to late next week. Bismarck residents, you are going to be back in winter mode very quickly after this brief warm spell. Fargo, North Dakota, currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Fargo is already cold, and both blasts are going to keep you well below average through the next 10 days. Expect overnight lows back in the single digits Fahrenheit. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, currently 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar to Fargo and Bismarck, the cold pattern is going to dominate here through the first half of April. Minneapolis, Minnesota, currently 27 degrees Fahrenheit with overcast skies. Minneapolis is going to get both cold blasts in sequence. The first arriving Monday, the second arriving Wednesday into Thursday. Overnight lows could drop to the single digits Fahrenheit during the peak of the second blast. Omaha, Nebraska, currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Omaha is going to feel the warmth build early this week before the bottom drops out. Temperatures this weekend may reach the low to mid-60s. Then both cold blasts arrive in sequence, dropping Omaha back to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit by the end of next week. Kansas City, Missouri, currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Kansas City follows the same pattern as Omaha. Warmth builds, then a dramatic temperature reversal. The second cold blast is the one to watch most carefully here. Temperatures could drop 15 to 25 degrees below the seasonal average. Wichita, Kansas, currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Wichita is going to be in the transition zone. The first cold blast may not fully reach Wichita, but the second blast absolutely will. Expect temperatures in the low to mid-30s Fahrenheit by the end of next week. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Oklahoma City sits right in that critical zone where the shifting upper-level high is going to build heat before the cold blast arrives. Temperatures this week could reach into the upper 70s and low 80s Fahrenheit. Then the cold blast sweeps through, potentially dropping temperatures by 30 degrees or more over just 24 to 48 hours. Tulsa, Oklahoma, currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Same dramatic temperature pattern as Oklahoma City. Warm early, then a sharp drop with the second cold blast. Now let us cross into Texas, where the forecast is particularly complex and dramatic. Dallas, Texas, currently 53 degrees Fahrenheit with partly sunny skies. Dallas is going to ride the heat wave earlier this week. Temperatures by mid-next week, as the high pressure moves over the south central, could reach into the mid to upper 80s Fahrenheit, possibly touching 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Then the cold blast arrives Thursday and Friday of next week. The potential temperature drop is extraordinary, from near 90 degrees Fahrenheit to potentially the 40s or low 50s Fahrenheit within 48 hours. Dallas residents need to watch this forecast very carefully. Fort Worth, Texas, currently 53 degrees Fahrenheit, almost identical to Dallas. Dramatic warm-up, then an equally dramatic cold blast. Houston, Texas, currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit with passing clouds. Houston is going to see significant heat build as the upper-level high moves over the south central. Temperatures could reach into the upper 80s and low 90s Fahrenheit by Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Then the cold blast arrives. How far south this blast penetrates into South Texas is still uncertain, but Houston is in the impact zone. Temperatures could drop from the high 80s to the low 50s Fahrenheit very rapidly. San Antonio, Texas, currently 57 degrees Fahrenheit, similar to Houston for the heat wave. The cold blast reach to San Antonio is uncertain and depends on exactly where the upper-level high parks itself. But the likelihood is that San Antonio feels a significant temperature drop, potentially from the upper 80s to the 60s or even upper 50s Fahrenheit. Austin, Texas, currently 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Austin is in a very similar position to San Antonio and Houston. Expect dramatic warmth followed by a notable cold blast by the end of next week. El Paso, Texas, currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit. El Paso is in a unique position. The southwest heat that is driving this whole pattern has been centered near El Paso. Temperatures are going to push well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit this weekend in the El Paso area. Then the shift happens and temperatures moderate. But El Paso tends to escape the most brutal cold blasts because of its southern location. Look for a temperature moderation rather than a full cold blast by the end of next week. Lubbock, Texas, currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Lubbock sits on the southern edge of the cold blast zone. If the second cold blast penetrates as deeply as some models suggest, Lubbock could see temperatures drop from the 70s and 80s Fahrenheit to the 30s and 40s Fahrenheit very quickly. Amarillo, Texas, currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Amarillo is going to be more directly in the path of the cold blast than southern Texas cities. Expect a temperature drop of 20 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit when the second blast arrives. Now let us move into the Gulf South and Southeast, New Orleans, Louisiana, currently 56 degrees Fahrenheit. New Orleans is going to see the heat build significantly as the upper level high shifts east, temperatures reaching the mid to upper 80s Fahrenheit by midweek of next week. Then the cold blast. How far south it pushes is still the key question for New Orleans, but even a partial cold blast could drop temperatures to the 50s or low 60s Fahrenheit. Jackson, Mississippi, currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit with overcast skies. Jackson is going to experience both the heat surge and the subsequent cold blast. This is going to be a wild week of weather for the Mississippi area. Memphis, Tennessee, currently 53 degrees Fahrenheit with broken clouds. Memphis is squarely in the impact zone for both the heat surge and the cold blast. Temperatures could swing from the mid-80s to the 40s Fahrenheit over the course of a week. Nashville, Tennessee, currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Nashville is already cool. The heat surge early next week will bring Nashville temperatures into the low to mid-70s Fahrenheit. Then the cold blast arrives with a vengeance. Temperatures dropping back to the 30s and 40s Fahrenheit by the end of next week, with potential for some snow mixing in for the Nashville area. Atlanta, Georgia, currently 42 degrees Fahrenheit with sunny skies. Atlanta is going to see a nice warm-up this week and into early next week, temperatures reaching the upper 60s and low 70s Fahrenheit. Then the cold blast moves through. Atlanta could see temperatures drop back to the 40s and possibly 30s Fahrenheit by the end of next week. Some snow is not out of the question for the Atlanta metro area if conditions line up correctly. Atlanta residents remember well what happens when cold air meets moisture in this area. Birmingham, Alabama, currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar pattern to Atlanta, warm up followed by a sharp cool down. Snow is possible for Birmingham with this pattern. Charlotte, North Carolina, currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Charlotte is already on the cool side. The warm-up brings Charlotte to the mid to upper 60s this week. Then the cold blast arrives. Temperatures drop back to the 30s and 40s Fahrenheit. Snow is possible for the Charlotte area with the second cold blast. Raleigh, North Carolina, currently 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Raleigh follows Charlotte's pattern closely. Watch for potential winter precipitation with the second cold blast. Richmond, Virginia, currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Richmond is going to warm nicely this week. The cold blast brings temperatures back to the 30s Fahrenheit. Snow is in the realm of possibility. Washington, District of Columbia, currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit with partly sunny skies. The nation's capital is cold today but is about to warm up significantly. Temperatures reaching into the mid to upper 60s Fahrenheit by the weekend. Then the cold blast sweeps through next week, dropping Washington back to the 40s and 30s Fahrenheit. Snow is possible with the second cold blast for the Washington area, Baltimore, Maryland, Currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly identical to Washington for the forecast pattern. Warm up this week, cold blast next week, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit with partly sunny skies. Philadelphia is cold right now. The warm up brings temperatures to the mid to upper 60s by this weekend. Then the cold blast arrives. Philadelphia could see temperatures plunge back to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit with potential snow. Now, I want to pause here for a moment and give you something important. If you are in the Southeast or Mid-Atlantic, your most critical weather window is Thursday through Sunday of next week. Mark those days on your calendar. That is when the second cold blast is going to be at peak intensity in your region. Make sure your winter gear is still accessible. Do not pack away your heavy coats yet. Let us continue up the East Coast and into the Northeast, New York City, New York. Currently, 29 degrees Fahrenheit. New York is cold today. The warm-up is coming and temperatures will push toward the mid to upper 50s and potentially low 60s Fahrenheit by this weekend and early next week. Then the cold blast arrives. New York could see temperatures drop back to the 20s Fahrenheit with potential for a significant snowstorm as cold air collides with moisture from the Atlantic. Newark, New Jersey, currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly the same forecast as New York City. Watch for the potential winter storm as the cold blast arrives. Trenton, New Jersey, currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit, same cold blast impact as the broader New York to Philadelphia corridor. Hartford, Connecticut, currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Hartford is going to feel the full brunt of the second cold blast. Temperatures dropping to the low to mid-20s Fahrenheit with significant snow possible. Providence, Rhode Island, currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Providence is squarely in the zone for a potentially significant snowstorm from the second cold blast. One of the areas to watch very closely. Boston, Massachusetts, currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit with partly sunny skies. Boston is going to warm up nicely this week before the cold returns. The cold blast next week could bring a serious winter storm to the Boston area. Temperatures dropping to the low 20s Fahrenheit with potentially significant snowfall. Portland, Maine, currently 27 degrees Fahrenheit. Portland, Maine is at the northern end of the corridor where the heaviest snow totals are possible. Upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine are in the zone for a foot or more of snow from the Clipper and subsequent cold blast. Portland, Maine residents need to be paying very close attention to this forecast. Bangor, Maine. Currently 22 degrees Fahrenheit, Bangor is already cold and is firmly in the highest impact zone for snowfall with the coming cold blast. Prepare for significant snow. Burlington, Vermont, currently 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Burlington is in the bullseye for heavy snowfall with this pattern. A foot or more of snow is possible for the Burlington area. Concord, New Hampshire, currently 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Concord is in the high impact zone as well. Significant snow is possible. Albany, New York, currently 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Albany, New York sits at the heart of the potential heavy snow zone. Upstate New York, including Albany, Syracuse, and Buffalo, needs to be on high alert for significant snowfall with the second cold blast. Syracuse, New York, currently 23 degrees Fahrenheit, already cold. The cold blast reinforces the pattern and brings significant snowfall potential. Buffalo, New York, currently 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Buffalo knows snow, and this cold blast is going to deliver another round of it. Significant lake effect enhancement is possible as Arctic air passes over the Great Lakes. Now let us move through the Midwest, which is going to experience some of the most dramatic temperature swings of this entire pattern. Chicago, Illinois. Currently, 28 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Chicago is about to go on a wild temperature ride. Temperatures will warm to the low 50s Fahrenheit by this weekend. Then the first cold blast brings temperatures back down. Then the second blast drops Chicago back to the 20s Fahrenheit, potentially the teens Fahrenheit overnight. Wind chills could be dangerous with the second blast. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit with overcast skies. Milwaukee follows Chicago's pattern closely. The second cold blast here is going to be brutal. Temperatures in the teens to low 20s Fahrenheit with significant wind chills. Madison, Wisconsin. Currently 26 degrees Fahrenheit, same cold blast impact as Milwaukee. Green Bay, Wisconsin. Currently 23 degrees Fahrenheit with ice fog. Green Bay is already in winter mode. Both cold blasts reinforce the cold and winter weather pattern here, Detroit, Michigan. Currently 27 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Detroit is in the cold blast zone. Temperatures drop back to the teens and low 20s Fahrenheit with the second blast. Some snow is likely. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Currently 23 degrees Fahrenheit with light freezing rain. Grand Rapids is already dealing with winter weather today. The cold blasts next week bring more of the same. Significant lake effect snow enhancement is possible. Lansing, Michigan. Currently 24 degrees Fahrenheit with light snow. Lansing is firmly in the winter weather zone and stays there with both cold blasts. Traverse City, Michigan. Currently 20 degrees Fahrenheit with light snow and mostly cloudy skies. Traverse City is in a cold weather pattern right now and both cold blasts will keep winter active here. Cleveland, Ohio. Currently 25 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Cleveland is going to warm up briefly this week. Then the cold blast arrives and drops Cleveland back to the low to mid-20s Fahrenheit. Lake effect snow is possible with the Arctic air pouring over Lake Erie, Columbus, Ohio. Currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Columbus follows a similar but slightly less extreme pattern compared to Cleveland. Still expecting a significant cold blast and potential winter precipitation. Cincinnati, Ohio. Currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit with partly sunny skies. Cincinnati is slightly warmer and further south than Cleveland, but the cold blast still arrives. Temperatures dropping to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit with possible winter precipitation. Indianapolis, Indiana. Currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit with light snow. Indianapolis is already dealing with winter weather today. Both cold blasts next week reinforce the winter pattern and keep temperatures below average. Fort Wayne, Indiana. Currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Fort Wayne is in a cold weather pattern and both blasts maintain that. South Bend, Indiana. Currently 27 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold pattern continues with both blasts. Louisville, Kentucky. Currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Louisville is going to warm up nicely this week to the mid to upper 60s Fahrenheit. Then the cold blast brings temperatures back down to the 30s Fahrenheit with possible winter precipitation. Lexington, Kentucky. Currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar to Louisville. Warm up followed by a cold blast. Winter precipitation is possible. Now let us swing through the central states. St. Louis, Missouri. Currently 47 degrees Fahrenheit. St. Louis is going to experience a significant warm-up this week to the mid to upper 60s Fahrenheit. Then the cold blast arrives. Temperatures could drop to the 30s Fahrenheit rapidly. The rate of temperature change here is going to be dramatic. Kansas City, Missouri, currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit. We already covered Kansas City from the plains perspective. The warm-up followed by a cold blast is going to be dramatic here. Springfield, Missouri, currently 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Springfield warms nicely this week before both cold blasts arrive. Little Rock, Arkansas, currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Little Rock is going to feel the heat surge strongly next week before the cold blast arrives. Temperatures could reach the low 80s Fahrenheit before dropping back to the 50s and possibly 40s Fahrenheit. Now here is the part I promised you. The middle of this forecast is critical. Let me give you the full city-by-city breakdown for the southern states so you know exactly when and what to expect. Jackson, Tennessee, currently 49 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat builds early next week. The cold blast arrives Wednesday through Friday. Knoxville, Tennessee, currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm-up brings Knoxville to the mid to upper 60s. The cold blast drops temperatures back to the 30s and possibly 20s Fahrenheit by the end of next week. Chattanooga, Tennessee, currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar to Knoxville, the warm-up followed by the cold blast. Huntsville, Alabama, currently 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Huntsville is going to feel both the heat surge and the cold blast strongly. The temperature swing here could be 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit over the course of a week. Montgomery, Alabama, currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Montgomery is going to see temperatures in the low to mid-70s Fahrenheit next week before the cold blast drops them back to the 50s and 40s Fahrenheit. Mobile, Alabama, currently 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Mobile sits far enough south that the full cold blast may not reach all the way here, but a significant temperature drop is still expected from the upper 70s to the 50s or low 60s Fahrenheit. Jackson, Mississippi, already covered above. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Baton Rouge is in the heat surge zone. Temperatures reaching the upper 70s to low 80s Fahrenheit next week. The cold blast reach to Baton Rouge is uncertain, but the pattern change will be felt. Shreveport, Louisiana. Currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Shreveport is going to feel both the heat surge and the cold blast more strongly than Baton Rouge because of its more northerly location. Columbia, South Carolina. Currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Columbia warms up nicely this week, and into next week, the cold blast then brings temperatures back to the 40s Fahrenheit with possible winter precipitation mixing in. Charleston, South Carolina. Currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Charleston warms toward the upper 60s this week. The cold blast drops temperatures back to the 50s and 40s Fahrenheit. Snow is unlikely for Charleston, but cool rain is possible. Savannah, Georgia. Currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Savannah warms nicely this week. The cold blast brings temperatures back to the upper 40s and low 50s Fahrenheit. Jacksonville, Florida. Currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Jacksonville is warm, but not dramatically so. The heat surge brings Jacksonville to the low to mid-70s. The cold blast moderates temperatures back to the 50s. Orlando, Florida. Currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Orlando is going to warm nicely. The cold blast impact in central Florida will be felt as a significant cool down from the 70s back toward the low to mid-60s Fahrenheit. Tampa, Florida. Currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Tampa sees similar pattern to Orlando. Warm up, then a noticeable cool down. Miami, Florida. Currently 67 degrees Fahrenheit with light rain. Miami and South Florida generally escape the full cold blast impact. Look for temperatures to stay in the 60s and 70s Fahrenheit range through the pattern change. However, noticeably cooler days are possible with the second cold blast. Now let us move through the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes again and add some additional cities. Dayton, Ohio. Currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Dayton warms briefly before both cold blasts arrive. Toledo, Ohio. Currently 27 degrees Fahrenheit with light snow. Toledo is already dealing with winter weather and both cold blasts maintain the cold pattern. Akron, Ohio. Currently 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Akron is in the cold pattern and the blasts reinforce it. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Currently 24 degrees Fahrenheit. Pittsburgh warms up briefly before the cold blasts arrive. Snow is possible with both blasts. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Harrisburg is in the cold blast zone for both events. Allentown, Pennsylvania. Currently 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Same cold blast impact as Harrisburg. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Currently 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Scranton is in the higher elevation zone where significant snowfall is possible with the cold blast. Now let us cover the Pacific Northwest and Mountain West in more detail. Spokane, Washington. Currently 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Spokane is going to feel a significant temperature drop with both cold blasts. Temperatures dropping from the mid-50s back to the low 30s Fahrenheit. Snow is possible. Tacoma, Washington. Currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit with light rain. Tacoma follows Seattle's S pattern closely. Olympia, Washington. Currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit with light rain. Same forecast as Tacoma and Seattle. Eugene, Oregon. Currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit with scattered clouds. Eugene is going to warm up this week before the cold blasts arrive. Snow in the Cascades will increase significantly with both cold blasts. Medford, Oregon. Currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Medford warms nicely before the cold pattern returns. Bend, Oregon. Currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Bend is in the elevation zone where significant snow is possible with both cold blasts. Boise, Idaho already covered. Let us add Idaho Falls, Idaho. Currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit. Idaho Falls is going to be cold with both blasts. Winter conditions likely. Pocatello, Idaho. Currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar to Idaho Falls. Now let us move through more of the Southwest and Mountain West. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Currently 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Albuquerque is going to see temperatures climb toward the 70s and low 80s Fahrenheit as the heat dome builds over the region. Then the second cold blast drops temperatures back to the 40s and low 50s Fahrenheit. Snow is possible in Albuquerque with the second cold blast. Santa Fe, New Mexico. Currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Santa Fe at higher elevation is going to see significant snow with the cold blast. Temperatures dropping from the 60s to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit at Las Cruces, New Mexico. Currently 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Las Cruces benefits from southern exposure and the cold blast impact will be moderated. Still, temperatures will drop from the 70s to the 50s Fahrenheit. Roswell, New Mexico. Currently 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Roswell is in the transition zone. The heat builds this week and the cold blast arrives next week. Flagstaff, Arizona, currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit with passing clouds. Flagstaff at 7,000 feet elevation is particularly sensitive to cold blasts. While Phoenix is hitting 100 degrees Fahrenheit this weekend, Flagstaff will be significantly cooler. When the cold blast arrives, Flagstaff could see significant snow accumulation. Prescott, Arizona, currently 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Prescott, at mile-high elevation, follows Flagstaff's pattern closely. Snow is possible with the cold blast. Mesa, Arizona, currently 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Mesa follows the Phoenix pattern. Extreme heat this weekend, then a moderation with the pattern change. Tempe, Arizona, currently 72 degrees Fahrenheit, same as Mesa and Phoenix. Scottsdale, Arizona, currently 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Same extreme heat this weekend, followed by moderation next week. Now let us cover more of Nevada and Utah. Reno, Nevada, currently 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Reno is going to warm up significantly this week as the heat dome expands. Temperatures reaching the 70s and possibly low 80s Fahrenheit. Then the cold blast drops Reno back to the 40s and 30s Fahrenheit. Carson City, Nevada, currently 47 degrees Fahrenheit, similar to Reno. Dramatic warm-up followed by a cold blast. Salt Lake City, Utah, already covered above in detail. Provo, Utah, currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Provo follows Salt Lake City's pattern. Ogden, Utah, currently 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Same forecast as Salt Lake City and Provo. St. George, Utah, currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit. St. George is in the southwest heat zone. Temperatures pushing toward the 90s Fahrenheit this week. The cold blast brings significant moderation. Now let us go back through some additional detail for the mid-Atlantic states. Norfolk, Virginia, currently 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Norfolk warms this week to the 60s. The cold blast brings temperatures back to the 30s and possibly 20s Fahrenheit. Winter precipitation is possible. Virginia Beach, Virginia, currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit, similar to Norfolk. Newport News, Virginia, currently 36 degrees Fahrenheit, same cold blast impact as Norfolk. Roanoke, Virginia, currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Roanoke is in the Appalachian region where elevation enhances snowfall potential with the cold blast. Significant snow is possible. Charlottesville, Virginia, currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Charlottesville warms up before the cold blast arrives. Snow is possible. Fredericksburg, Virginia, currently 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Fredericksburg is between Washington and Richmond. The cold blast impact is significant here. Annapolis, Maryland, currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Annapolis warms this week. The cold blast returns winter weather. Wilmington, Delaware, currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Wilmington follows Philadelphia's forecast closely. Dover, Delaware, currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Same cold blast impact as Wilmington and Philadelphia. Atlantic City, New Jersey, currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Atlantic City warms this week before the cold blast. Winter precipitation is possible with the cold blast. Now some additional New England cities. Worcester, Massachusetts, currently 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Worcester is already cold. Both cold blasts maintain and reinforce the cold winter pattern here. Significant snow is possible. Springfield, Massachusetts, currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Springfield follows Hartford and Worcester's pattern. Pittsfield, Massachusetts, currently 21 degrees Fahrenheit. Pittsfield in the Berkshires is in the high impact zone for snowfall. Manchester, New Hampshire, currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Manchester is in the potential heavy snow zone with the cold blast. Portsmouth, New Hampshire, currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar to Manchester. Montpelier, Vermont, currently 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Montpelier, the Vermont state capital, is already extremely cold. Both cold blasts keep Vermont in a deep winter pattern with significant snowfall likely. Rutland, Vermont, currently 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Rutland is in the snow belt. Significant accumulation is possible. Augusta, Maine, currently 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Augusta is in the heavy snow zone for the cold blast. Lewiston, Maine, currently 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Same heavy snow potential as Augusta and Bangor. Let us cover some upstate New York cities in more detail. Plattsburgh, New York, currently 21 degrees Fahrenheit. Plattsburgh on Lake Champlain is in the Bull SI for heavy snow with the cold blast and clipper storm combination. Saratoga Springs, New York, currently 27 degrees Fahrenheit. Significant snowfall possible. Binghamton, New York, currently 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Binghamton is already cold and the cold blasts reinforce the heavy snow pattern. Rochester, New York, currently 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Rochester plus lake effect from Lake Ontario equals significant snowfall with the cold blast, Utica, New York. Currently 21 degrees Fahrenheit, Utica is in the snow belt, and the cold blast will bring significant accumulation. Now let me talk to you about the fire danger, because while everyone is focused on the cold blast, there is a very real and immediate hazard happening right now. Red flag warnings are in effect through today for most of Wyoming, including Casper and Cheyenne, all the way down into Colorado, including Denver, and across into Nebraska. Wind gusts are reaching 60 to 70 miles per hour in some of these areas right now. Combined with very low humidity from the heat dome overhead, this creates extreme fire danger. If you are in Wyoming, Colorado, or Nebraska today, do not use outdoor grills, do not burn brush, be aware of any sparks or ignition sources. This fire weather is serious and will persist through tonight. Now here is the big picture summary that ties everything together. The pattern we are entering is what meteorologists call a blocking pattern. The upper level high that has been parked over the southwest is going to become a blocking high over the south central states. This will force weather systems to navigate around it rather than flowing smoothly across the country. The result is amplified extremes. The southwest gets extreme heat while the high is overhead. The south central gets hit with heat when the high moves there. And the cold air behind the high gets forced into a sharp southward plunge rather than just trickling south gradually. This blocking pattern is expected to persist through the first half of April. That means this is not a one-time event. This is a pattern, and the polar vortex split means that cold air will continue to be available to reload and come south in waves throughout April. We are likely going to see at least 2 major cold outbreaks in April based on the current data. The first one is the one we have been discussing, arriving late next week. The second one is hinted at in the models for the second week of April. I am going to be following this very closely and bringing you updates as the data evolves. Now here is the storm tracking information you need to know. Storm system number 1. A weak storm system is possible for this weekend, Saturday into Sunday. This system would bring a light swath of snow and possible freezing rain for the northern tier from the Dakotas into Minnesota and possibly Wisconsin. Accumulations from this system would be light, generally 1 to 3 inches, with the heaviest amounts in North Dakota and northern Minnesota. This is not a major storm, but it is a heads up for those areas. Storm system number 2. A much more significant storm system is expected to develop in conjunction with the second cold blast, arriving around Wednesday through Thursday of next week. This storm has the potential to bring damaging winds with gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour across the Central Plains. Severe weather is possible in the warm sector ahead of this system across the southern plains and into the mid-south. Then, as this system tracks northeast and cold air wraps around it, significant snow is possible from the Great Lakes all the way through upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Wind gusts on the cold side of this storm could reach 60 miles per hour. Heavy snow accumulation of a foot or more is possible in the highest impact areas. This is a storm that deserves your attention starting right now. Here is the key timing for this storm. Wednesday is when the severe weather risk is highest across the southern plains and mid-south. Wednesday night into Thursday is when the snow line comes crashing south across the Midwest. Thursday is when the snow spreads into Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes. Thursday night into Friday is when the snow is heaviest in the Northeast. Friday and Saturday, the cold air behind the storm keeps temperatures dangerously cold across a wide area. If you are in any of these areas, this is your action window. Wednesday through Sunday of next week is when you need to have your preparations in place. Make sure you have emergency supplies. Make sure your vehicle is ready for winter conditions. Make sure you have medications and necessities stocked up before this storm arrives. Now, let me add a few more cities to our forecast list to make sure we have broad coverage. Tulsa, Oklahoma, already covered. Let us add Lawton, Oklahoma, currently in the upper 50s Fahrenheit. Lawton is going to see the heat surge and then the cold blast. Dramatic temperature swings are expected. Corpus Christi, Texas, currently 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Corpus Christi is far enough south that the cold blast will be moderated, but a significant temperature drop from the upper 70s to the 60s Fahrenheit is expected. Laredo, Texas, currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Laredo is at the extreme southern edge of the cold blast zone. The cold blast impact here is uncertain. Monitor the forecast closely as we get closer to the event. Brownsville, Texas, currently 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Brownsville is the warmest location on our radar, and is likely to see only a modest temperature drop with the cold blast. McAllen, Texas, currently 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar to Brownsville, the cold blast impact is reduced at this southern location. Pensacola, Florida, currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Pensacola warms nicely this week. The cold blast impact brings temperatures back to the 50s and possibly upper 40s Fahrenheit. Tallahassee, Florida, currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Tallahassee sees a bigger cold blast impact than Pensacola because of its inland location. Temperatures could drop to the 40s Fahrenheit with the second cold blast. Gainesville, Florida, currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Gainesville follows Tallahassee's pattern for the cold blast. Daytona Beach, Florida, currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Daytona Beach warms this week. The cold blast brings temperatures back to the 50s Fahrenheit. Here are a few more Midwest cities to round out our coverage. Peoria, Illinois, currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Peoria warms briefly before the cold blast. Temperatures drop back to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit with both blasts. Springfield, Illinois, currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Springfield follows a similar pattern to Peoria. Rockford, Illinois, currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Rockford is in the northern Illinois cold zone. Both blasts reinforce the winter pattern. Decatur, Illinois, currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Decatur follows the central Illinois pattern. Evansville, Indiana, currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Evansville warms before the cold blasts. The second blast brings temperatures to the 30s Fahrenheit. Terre Haute, Indiana, currently 35 degrees Fahrenheit, similar to Evansville. Green Bay, Wisconsin, already noted as cold with ice fog. Both cold blasts keep Wisconsin firmly in winter mode through the first half of April. Eau Claire, Wisconsin, currently 24 degrees Fahrenheit. Eau Claire is in the deep cold pattern, and both blasts reinforce it strongly. La Crosse, Wisconsin, currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. La Crosse follows a similar cold pattern. Wausau, Wisconsin, currently 19 degrees Fahrenheit with low clouds. Wausau is one of the coldest populated areas in the country today. The cold blasts will keep winter active here. Duluth, Minnesota, currently 23 degrees Fahrenheit with overcast skies. Duluth and the Arrowhead region of Minnesota are going to remain in a deep winter pattern through both cold blasts. St. Cloud, Minnesota, currently in the upper 20s Fahrenheit. St. Cloud warms slightly before both cold blasts reinforce winter. Rochester, Minnesota, currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Rochester, Minnesota follows Minneapolis and St. Paul's pattern. Now let me talk about something that I want every single person watching to understand, because this is the part that matters for your safety. The temperature swings happening over the next 2 weeks are extraordinarily large for this time of year. We are not talking about 10-degree swings from one day to the next. We are talking about 30, 40, even 50-degree temperature changes over periods of just 48 to 72 hours in some areas. Your body needs time to adjust to temperature changes. Going from temperatures in the 80s Fahrenheit on Tuesday to temperatures in the 30s Fahrenheit on Friday is a physiological stress. If you are over 60 years old, if you have any heart or respiratory conditions, if you have young children or elderly family members, please pay close attention to this forecast and prepare accordingly. Make sure medications are filled. Make sure heating systems are operational. Make sure warm clothing is accessible even if you just stored away your winter clothes because it felt like spring. And for those in the Southwest dealing with the extreme heat this week, the same advice applies in reverse. Temperatures over 100 degrees Fahrenheit are dangerous. Stay hydrated. Limit outdoor activity during peak heat hours of 11 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. Make sure air conditioning is working. If you do not have air conditioning, identify cooling centers in your community. This weather pattern is bringing hazards at both ends of the spectrum simultaneously. The heat in the Southwest and the cold in the North are both dangerous. Please take both seriously. Now let me circle back to the big picture one more time, because I want to leave you with a clear mental map of what the next 2 weeks look like. Days 1 through 4, today through Saturday. The Southwest and West bake under historic early season heat. The Southwest is under extreme heat warnings. The northern tier is cold but quiet, mild and pleasant conditions across much of the central and southern United States. Days 5 and 6, Sunday into Monday. The first cold blast begins moving south from Canada, primarily impacts the northern Great Plains, upper Midwest, and northern Rockies. Temperatures 5 to 15 degrees below average in those areas. Temperatures warm up across the eastern United States as the cold hangs to the north. Days 7 and 8, Tuesday into Wednesday. The upper level high shifts east toward the south central states. Heat surges strongly across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and the lower Mississippi Valley. Some locations reach the upper 80s and possibly low 90s Fahrenheit. The cold blast is charging up behind the moving high pressure. A significant storm system begins to develop in the Central Plains. This is also the window of highest severe weather risk, days 9 and 10, Thursday into Friday. The second cold blast arrives. This is the main event. Temperatures crash across the central and eastern United States. The storm system brings heavy snow to the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and Northeast. Temperatures in the northern tier drop to the teens and 20s Fahrenheit. The southern tier experiences a dramatic cool down of 20 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. The southwest stays warm, but sees some moderation. Days 11 and 12, Saturday and Sunday. The cold blast persists across much of the eastern two-thirds of the country. Cold wind chills are dangerous across the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. Heavy snow continues in the Northeast. The South and Gulf Coast begin to moderate back toward more seasonal temperatures. Day 13 and beyond into the second week of April. The models hint at another cold blast developing in the second week of April as the polar vortex split continues to send cold air south in waves. The blocking pattern is not going away quickly. April is shaping up to be a cold and active month for much of the country. Here is the bottom line message I want you to take from this forecast. Winter is not done. Not by a long shot. Even though we have had warm days and even some record heat in parts of the Southwest this week, the overall pattern for the next 3 to 4 weeks is going to be cold, active, and dynamic. The polar vortex split is a big deal. The sudden stratospheric warming event that caused it is a big deal. The blocking pattern it is creating is a big deal. And the impacts on your daily life, your heating bills, your travel plans, your outdoor activities are going to be very real over the next few weeks. I want to make sure that everyone watching this has the information they need to stay safe, stay prepared, and stay informed. That is why I am asking you to do a few things right now. Drop your city in the comments section. Tell me where you are, and I will make sure the specific forecast for your city is addressed. Your city name and state is all I need. If there are enough of you from a particular area that I have not covered in detail today, I will dedicate specific coverage to that area in the next update. The models are going to be updating every 12 hours over the next few days, and each update could shift the details of this forecast significantly. The second cold blast timing, the track of the storm system, the extent of snowfall, and how far south the cold air penetrates are all still evolving in the models. Every update matters. Every 12 hours of new model data brings us closer to certainty about what is going to happen. This is an active and evolving weather pattern. It demands active and evolving coverage, and that is exactly what you are going to get. One more thing I want to address before we wrap up today, and this is something that might surprise you. There is actually a silver lining to this cold pattern for some parts of the country. The drought conditions that have been developing across the Southwest, the plains, and parts of the South need precipitation desperately. And while cold air by itself does not bring rain, the storm systems that are associated with these cold blasts do bring moisture. The precipitation forecast for the next 10 days actually shows above average moisture for the northern tier states where these storms are going to track. That is good news for the Missouri River Basin, the Great Lakes region, and the upper Mississippi River Valley. The snowpack in the Rockies could also benefit from the cold and snow associated with these blasts. Meanwhile, the drought continues and deepens across the Southwest under the heat dome. The record heat this week is baking the already dry land and increasing evaporation from soil and vegetation. Fire danger is extreme across the Southwest and Southern Rockies not just today, but through the entire coming week. If you are in New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, or Utah, be extremely fire aware this week. Now here is something I want you to know that is going to be in the next video. The second week of April is shaping up to be potentially very interesting and possibly the most impactful weather period of the spring season so far. The models are beginning to hint at a pattern that could bring multiple rounds of late-season winter weather to the Northeast and Midwest, combined with severe weather potential across the South, all in a tight time window. I am going to be watching this very carefully and bringing you the full breakdown in the next video. Do not miss it. If you are not subscribed, this is your sign to hit that button right now because the next 2 weeks are going to require daily attention to the forecast. There is one thing I always want to leave you with, and it is simply this. Weather is powerful and dynamic, and it does not care about our plans. But when we are informed and prepared, we can navigate even the most dramatic weather patterns safely. That is what this forecast is about. Getting you the information you need as far in advance as possible so that you and your family are safe, warm, and ready. 270 cities, 2 cold blasts, 1 polar vortex split, and a forecast that is going to be evolving rapidly over the next week. Stay close, stay informed, and drop your city in the comments right now. I will see you in the next video. Now, let me give you something extra that I know a lot of you are going to find incredibly useful. I want to walk you through a practical preparation checklist based on this specific forecast, because knowing the weather is coming is only half of the equation. The other half is being ready for it. If you are in the Southwest dealing with extreme heat this week, here is what you need to do right now. First, check on your neighbors who are elderly or who live alone. Extreme heat kills more Americans every year than any other weather-related hazard, and isolated seniors are at the highest risk. A simple phone call or a knock on the door could save a life. Second, if you have pets, do not leave them outside during the hottest parts of the day. Pavement temperatures in Phoenix, Arizona this weekend could reach 150 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, which can burn paws in seconds. Third, check your vehicle air conditioning before you need it. When temperatures are at 110 degrees Fahrenheit, a vehicle air conditioning failure is not just uncomfortable, it is potentially life-threatening. If you are in the northern tier states bracing for the first cold blast this coming Monday, here is your checklist. First, pull your winter gear back out. I know a lot of people have been so excited about warm spring weather that they packed things away. Get it back out. Second, check your vehicle antifreeze levels and make sure your tires are properly inflated. Cold air deflates tires rapidly, and underinflated tires dramatically reduce traction and increase blowout risk. Third, have at least 3 days of food and water in your home in case a significant snowstorm limits your ability to get out safely. If you are in the Northeast watching the potential for a major snowstorm from the second cold blast arriving Thursday through Saturday of next week, here is your priority checklist. First, check your snow removal equipment right now. Make sure your snowblower starts, your shovels are accessible, and you have ice melt stocked up. Stores run out of ice melt and sandbags very quickly when a major storm is forecast. Buy it now while the shelves are still fully stocked. Second, make sure your vehicle has a winter emergency kit. This should include a blanket, a small shovel, a bag of sand or kitty litter for traction, jumper cables, a flashlight with fresh batteries, and an extra phone charger. Third, if you have any travel planned for next Thursday through Sunday, consider adjusting those plans now. A foot of snow in upstate New York, Vermont, or New Hampshire means very dangerous travel conditions. Making a schedule change now is much easier than being stranded in a storm later. Now let me add a few more cities that I know my viewers have been asking about and that I want to make sure get covered in this forecast. At Fayetteville, Arkansas, currently in the low 50s Fahrenheit. Fayetteville warms nicely this week before the cold blast arrives. Temperatures could drop back to the 30s Fahrenheit with the second cold blast. Some winter precipitation is possible. Jonesboro, Arkansas, currently in the upper 40s Fahrenheit, similar to Fayetteville. Fort Smith, Arkansas, currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Fort Smith is in the transition zone between the heat surge and the cold blast. Both will be felt strongly here. Knoxville already covered. Let us add Johnson City, Tennessee, currently in the mid-30s Fahrenheit. Johnson City is in the Appalachian Highlands where elevation enhances snowfall with cold blasts. Significant snow is possible here. Asheville, North Carolina, currently 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Asheville is at high elevation, and the cold blast will bring significant snow potential to the western North Carolina mountains. Greensboro, North Carolina, currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Greensboro warms up this week before the cold blast. Snow is possible with the second blast. Wilmington, North Carolina, currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Wilmington is too far south and near the coast for significant snow, but a notable cool down is expected. Florence, South Carolina, currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Florence follows the broader South Carolina pattern. Warm up followed by a cold blast. Columbia, South Carolina, already covered in detail. Now let me address something that several of you might be thinking. You might be asking, is this forecast unusual? Have we seen patterns like this before? The answer is yes, we have seen patterns like this before, but not this dramatically and not this late in the season very often. The combination of record early season heat in the southwest alongside a polar vortex split and impending Arctic outbreaks is what makes this pattern particularly notable. The last time we had a similar configuration was during a period that brought late-season snow and significant cold outbreaks to areas that normally expect spring by this time. The models are showing this as a legitimate and significant pattern. This is not a minor cold spell that is being overhyped. This is a genuine major pattern change that deserves serious attention. Let me also quickly cover a few more locations in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies that deserve specific mention. Missoula, Montana. Currently 35 degrees Fahrenheit with fog. Missoula is going to feel both cold blasts strongly. Temperatures dropping to the teens and 20s Fahrenheit with snow. Great Falls, Montana. Currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Great Falls is surprisingly warm today thanks to downsloping winds, but that changes rapidly with the cold blast. Temperatures could drop 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit very quickly with the passage of the frontal system. Kalispell, Montana. Currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Kalispell near Glacier National Park is going to see significant snow with both cold blasts. Winter conditions will be intense. Helena, Montana. Currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Helena follows the broad Montana cold blast pattern. Butte, Montana. Currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Butte at high elevation is going to be hit hard by both cold blasts. Temperatures dropping to the single digits Fahrenheit overnight during the peak of the second blast. Rapid City, South Dakota. Currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Rapid City is going to warm nicely this week before the cold blast drops temperatures back to the 20s and 30s Fahrenheit. The Black Hills area could see significant snow. Aberdeen, South Dakota. Currently 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Aberdeen follows the Dakota's cold pattern. Both blasts reinforce the deep cold here. Pierre, South Dakota. Currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Pierre warms briefly before both cold blasts arrive. Grand Forks, North Dakota. Currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit with partly sunny skies. Grand Forks is already cold and both blasts maintain the deep winter pattern. Williston, North Dakota. Currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Williston warms slightly before both cold blasts arrive. The second blast is going to drop temperatures dramatically. I want to close this forecast with one final and very important point about the overall significance of what we are watching. We are in a period of dramatic atmospheric swings. The polar vortex split, the sudden stratospheric warming event, the heat dome in the southwest, and the Arctic outbreaks are all connected. They are all part of one large-scale atmospheric story that is unfolding right now over North America. Understanding this helps explain why the weather seems so extreme, so variable, and so hard to pin down. The models are working hard to capture these dramatic swings, and they are doing a reasonable job. But the details at the local level, the exact snowfall totals, the precise timing of frontal passages, the exact temperature minimums on the coldest nights, these will continue to sharpen over the coming days as we get closer to the events. My job is to give you the best possible advance warning of what is coming so that you can make smart decisions for yourself and your family. And I take that seriously. Every city I have named today is a real place where real people live and work and go about their lives, and every one of them deserves to know what is coming. That is why this forecast exists. That is why this video is more than 11,000 words long, because the details matter, because your safety matters, because being informed is the single most important thing you can do when dramatic weather is approaching. Drop your city in the comments. I want to hear from you. Tell me what the weather is like where you are right now. Tell me if you are dealing with the heat or the cold or the ice and snow. Let me know what questions you have about your local forecast. Your comments help me understand what you need most, and they help me shape the next video to be as useful as possible for all of you. The next video is going to have updated model information on the second cold blast, new data on the potential major storm system for next week, and preliminary information on what the second week of April looks